Hello everyone. Today I want to talk to you about the Matrix Mechanix webinar. It's basically a lot of the content from the Matrix Basics classroom class that gives CE credit. Now, the CE credit class, Matrix Basics, of course, is 3 hours long. You get 3 CE credits for that. This webinar is much shorter and therefore also doesn't give CE credit, and don't feel that this is a one-to-one match of what you're going to get in that Matrix Basics class. All right. But we are going to be taking a look basically at, well, the basics. So we're going to be accessing and navigating through Matrix specific to widgets on the dashboard, your personal profile information, including email signature, how to perform searches in various different ways, effectively using the button bar to perform tasks like printing listings and emailing listings. This is what we're really going to be focusing on today, including setting up what are called auto emails, where you're going to put in the criteria that the customer's interested in and let the system find new matches on a day-to-day basis or so and send matches to the client automatically. So without further ado, let me go ahead and pop in to Matrix, which I already have opened. So to get into Matrix, of course, you're going to want to be on the FMLS homepage, hover over products at the top, and just choose Matrix from the list there. Okay, so on the Matrix dashboard, which is what we call the home screen, on this dashboard, you have a bunch of widgets. They all have titles, like in the center column here, the top widget is called My Favorite Searches. Below that, we have an external links widget. So it can look a little cluttered, and maybe you don't use all of these widgets. So can you prioritize them? Can you move them around, close some, hide some? The answer is, for the most part, yes. So for instance, external links here, kind of in the center of this middle column. If I want to move that up, all I have to do is in that title bar of the widget where it actually says external links, click, hold my mouse button down, drag it up, let go of my mouse button, and it's going to snap into what's called the grid. So it's going to kind of always keep you a nice 3-column view here. But wherever you happen to let go of the mouse, that's where it's going to drop. So you can, like I said, for the most part, there is one special case here that I will talk about in just a moment. But for the most part, you can drag these around, drop them wherever you want to put them. But let's say, for instance, external links is kind of long. It's a pretty long widget, so I might want to hide this. So what I mean by hide is in that title bar, over to the right, I have a little up arrow. So the way I always like to teach this is if you think about a window shade or a screen at the front of a classroom, it might roll up, right? So there's an up arrow there to the right, that first little box. So if I click that up arrow, we still see external links, the title bar, but the actual content of that window is hidden. So I can pretty much roll up most all of these widgets. Okay, so I can kind of minimize their view. And then when I'm worried about it, if I need external links, now I just go over there, and the up arrow is now a down arrow indicating, just like a window blind, I can pull that down, and now there's the content. But let's just say, for example's sake, you don't use the external links widget at all. You can X out of it. There's a little X over to the right. So by way of explanation here, let me just tell you, that is as minimal as I can make my my Matrix dashboard. So notice that I do have 2 widgets over here, news and alerts I'll talk about first. News and alerts is always in the upper left corner. It's always open. You can't move it, you can't minimize it, you can't close it. So it's always going to be up there. Anytime we have a message that we want to convey to you, we might put it here in Matrix. So for instance, you can see right here that it's currently July when I'm recording this. And so on July 16th, they let everybody know that the August class schedule was posted for training purposes. So that, of course, is going to go away eventually. So I have no idea, of course, when you're watching this video on YouTube, but just be aware that news and alerts should always have current things going on. Otherwise, the other one that we have down here is additional. So you can notice here I can move additional around. I can hide and show. It's currently hidden because the arrow is pointing down. So if I click that down arrow to show it, any of you who might have had a panic attack when I was closing those widgets thinking, oh my gosh, what happens if I close one and then later on I decide I need it? Well, that's all you got to do is open this additional widget. One of our other trainers likes to call this the timeout box. That's exactly where these widgets went. So, for example, later on in just a few minutes, I'm going to use the Express Search widget. So to bring that back out, all I've got to do is click and drag it out. And to wherever I want to put it, let go, and that's where it's going to go. So you can always banish them to the additional widget box, bring them out. You have pretty much a strong control over your widgets. So that's how you can customize your dashboard, your start page, your home tab, whatever you'd like to call it. The reason, of course, I stick to calling it a dashboard is because if you look in any of the training manual type information, it's going to call it the dashboard. So the next thing that I want to do is tell you, not only can, of course, you customize your dashboard, but you can also upload your agent photo, do your email signature, all that kind of stuff. So while we're kind of in this setup frame of mind, let's talk about setting up your agent information. So how you're going to do that is you're going to hover over My Matrix up at the top, go down to My Information. It's about 2/3 of the way down. Click on My Information. And what comes up are several tabs or sub-tabs, I suppose, along this main body of the screen. So we have Information on the left, all the way over to a tab called Portal Profile. We're not going to hit all of these. Not all of them are pertinent to this basic webinar. You'll go into other tabs in other webinars or training opportunities. So what we're going to stick to is first the Information tab. So it's going to pull in the information from your FMLS roster. If any of that is wrong or you would prefer it to show something else, notice, for instance, that I've got check marks over to the right in the override column for my email address and my phone number. If the email address and phone number that is on my roster isn't always the one that I'm closest to or I pick up fastest, hopefully it is, keep your life simple, right? But if for whatever reason you would prefer to give clients a different, in my example here, email address or phone number, you can do that by overriding what pulled in from your roster and then typing in what it is you'd like to put in there. Same kind of concept goes for your name. It's not uncommon for people maybe who are named Christopher or Christina to want to go by Chris, or also maybe your name is from a culture that people are not familiar with, and so rather than hearing them just butcher your name all the time, you go by a quote-unquote American name. It's something that happens. Or you like to go by your middle name, whatever the case may be. Here in Matrix, you have the ability to go by a preferred name. Okay, so for instance, we wouldn't want to do this on your contracts, right? You definitely want your legal name as it appears on your license to be what's on the contract. But Matrix doesn't deal with contracts. We're just sending emails to our clients. Here's some listings I think you might like. So again, my name is Eric, but if people know me better as Bubba, I can type in Bubba, click Save down at the bottom, and now when my clients go to their portals, when they interact with me in Matrix, I'm going to be known to them as Bubba Glauner. Okay, so just be aware that you can override some settings here. Now, you cannot override your office information down below. If you find that any of your office information is incorrect, contact your office manager or your broker. They're going to need to contact us to get that corrected. Okay. Header and footer, CMA cover sheet, and portal profile, as I mentioned We're not going to cover those. Those are dealt with in other webinars and other training opportunities. So the only other tab up there that I want to hit is the email signature tab. So we're going to see over the course of the next hour or so that you always have the ability to edit your email signature on the fly as you're creating an email. If you forget that over the weekend you changed brokerages and come Monday morning you want to email some clients and it still has your old information on there from that brokerage you left on Friday, whoa, hang up, hold the phone. I need to change my email signature. Like I said, we're going to see that you can do this on the fly, but as it stands right now, this is where you can go in and kind of set that up ahead of time. You don't have to come up with a fake client with a fake search just to get somewhere to edit your email signature. So here, once again, we hovered over in My Matrix. We came to My Information. We're on the Email Signature tab now, and this is where you can put in your signature. Also, if you have your email signature set up somewhere else, like in Outlook or some other email program, this editor should be robust enough, to use a catchword, should be good enough to just copy and paste it from where you have it before into here. So you don't necessarily, or you shouldn't necessarily, have to recreate the wheel. Just copy and paste your email signature over here. Click Save at the bottom when you're done, and voila, now your emails from the Matrix system will have your email signature on it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go back home just to kind of cleanse our palate, so to speak. I don't have to go to home to cement what I just did. Like I said, just to kind of put a comma in our brains. The next thing I want to do is similar to the email signature editor that we just saw under the My Information, under the My Matrix tab. You don't have to do a search before you can add a contact to send those properties to. We can both edit our email signature as we saw ahead of time on that screen, and as I'm mentioning, you can edit your email signature after the fact when you're actually in the middle of an email. Same concept with a client. We can add a client ahead of time and maybe get all our ducks in a row, so to speak, if your clients are ducks. Or we can do the work and then figure out, oh, I didn't add this client yet. Now that I've actually done the search for the homes, let me add the client in so that I can send it to them, right? So to add a client ahead of schedule, or to begin with, you're going to once again hover over My Matrix. It's not going to take long, I think, to realize that all of your customizations, so we've already talked about how you're presented to your client. We've talked about your email signature, and here we are talking about your clients. All of your personal touches that you can save to Matrix, for instance, CMAs that you create. If you just kind of take a look at that My Matrix tab, I think you're going to get a hint that all of those customizations are found under that tab. So notice that under My Matrix, the second one down is contacts. Go ahead and click there. Now I've got a contact already entered here. So as you gain contacts, yes, this is going to be basically your database of your contacts. But what I want to focus on right now is over on the left, there is an add button. So we can add a contact right now. When you click that add button, this screen comes up. Notice that there are 3 fields that have a gold background: first name, last name, and email address. Those are your required fields for a contact. So give your contact a first and a last name as well as an email address, and you're good to go. Notice that you can put in multiple email addresses, just separate them with a comma. If I could potentially give you some advice, I would recommend that you not join multiple people under a contact. I would give each individual person their own contact. The reason I mention this is when you combine contacts into one entry, essentially you're taking away their individual voice at indicating favorite properties. You might send some to one person, some to the other. It's possible. Also, I always like to give an example of, if you've got a couple who've been married for 50 years and for their 50th wedding anniversary, one of them wants to buy the other one a nice little cabin in the woods. Well, if you've put them on the same contact, you spoiled the surprise. But so taking away individual voices and spoiling a potential surprise real estate deal may be something that you might run into if you combine people. So then you're wondering, well, why would I put multiple email addresses then if you're going to recommend that I don't combine people? What I would say is if you've got a client who maybe has a work email address and a personal email address, you want to make sure that they're not losing anything. So maybe Monday through Friday, they'll get it at their work email, and on the weekends they'll get their personal email. It just gives you some freedom to make that choice. Okay. You do have a link down here in the lower left to show all fields where you can add a little more icing onto the cake, give it home information, the fact that maybe they're pre-approved for a mortgage if they're a buyer, whatever the case may be. You can add all that information here. So I'm going to toggle back now by clicking show fewer fields. So you don't have to fill in everything. It's just kind of, like I said, icing on the cake. So you can add a client. That's how you're going to do that ahead of time. Just keep adding clients for as many as you need. That's a good idea. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go back home. And so that is customizing your widgets on the dashboard, moving them around. We talked about your personal profile information, your email signature, and just real quickly there, adding contacts under My Matrix. That menu is where we kind of did most of that. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about searching through the system. There are actually 4 search methods in Matrix, 2 of which you see before you. So there's an express search widget over here to the right. So you can notice that you can put in an FMLS number or a street number, street name, unit, or the name of the subdivision. What makes this express is not just how quickly the system works, but the fact that you cannot customize it. It's not custom search, it's express search. That is to say, I cannot choose different fields to search on in that widget. I always have to use any one of those 5. You don't have to fill in all 5, of course, necessarily, but those are the 5 that you've got to search on. I would argue that, of course, the 4 different ways that you can search, some of them lend themselves to certain situations more than others. So where I would recommend using Express Search, 2 specific examples pop out into my mind. One is, let's say you've got a buyer who's just running around the neighborhood one day and they see a house that they're interested in. And so they call you and they tell you, hey, I saw this house and I'm interested in it. And so are you going to ask them, well, what's the FMLS number? Of course, they don't know, more than likely. I would be very surprised if they did. And you might say, okay, well, is it a single family home? Is it a rental? What's the category? Well, of course, they have no idea, right? All they have, let's cut to the chase, is the address, right? So if I know the address is 17 Johnson Street, I can type that in. And before I give away the secret by clicking search here, what I want to impress upon you is that I'm not indicating whether this is a single family home or a rental or what have you, and I'm not indicating whether it's pending, active, closed, because just because there's a sign in the yard doesn't necessarily mean that the home is active. Maybe it sold yesterday and the agent just hasn't had a chance to come get the sign out of the yard, right? So literally all that client knows is that street address. So that's what we're going to go with. Conversely, the other example that popped into my head is, let's say you're working up a CMA and you want to research your subject property. Has it ever been listed before? Can I get a history of this property? So you can put in the address, click search, and now you're going to see every listing that matches that property since about January 2007 is when our records go back to. Okay, they're going to continue on in the future, but consistently back to January 2007. So I can see that back in 2007, was when this was sold. There's a closing date over to the right. All right, this is what we call our results grid. Regardless of which of the 4 ways that you run the search, the results grid is going to be the same. So we see a little icon to the left to click on the pictures. There's the FMLS number. If I click on that, it will get me into my agent report. DET under type is for detached. If I saw ATT, that would be attached. There's going to be different ones that I think just with 5 minutes worth of experience in the system, you're going to become very well versed at what the types are. The price, since this is a closed listing, the price is the sale price. This went for a song, $78,700. The address was 17 Johnson. It's not in the subdivision. This is in the city of Atlanta, which is FMLS Area 22, that particular part of town. Fulton County, 3 beds, 2 baths, 0 half baths, built in 1925. There's 1 photo. Okay. It was listed on December 4th, 2006. It went on the market that same day, and it was set to expire at the end of May. But before we got there, we actually went into closing. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go back home. So that was an example of the Express Search widget and 1 or 2 thoughts on why that might be good for what it is you're looking for. So the other one, just to kind of put it in here, because we are looking at it, is what's called the speed bar. It's in this second green ribbon along the top here. The speed bar, if I wanted to, I can type in an address. Let's go for 12 Johnson. So 12 Johnson has gone on the market a few times. We had a sold and then 2 expired listings. Okay. So I can see that full history, right? It brings me back to this results grid. Also, if I'm using the speed bar, another nice thing about the speed bar up there is that it's always here. The Express Search widget, I have to go back to home to use that. That's the only place where that Express Search widget is. But the speed bar is going to be on every screen. No matter what screen you're on in Matrix, you always have the speed bar so that you can quickly go look up a property from anywhere. So I can put in the same address, or I can put in an FMLS number. There it is. And if I want to go to a different FMLS number, like I said, it's right there. There we go. All right. So that's the speed bar. Now the speed bar is neat. Okay, yes, it's always up there. That's a nice little feature. But I can also do some interesting things here. So I just quickly brought up one that I had previously done. So I'm telling the speed bar here to look at detached active homes between $450,000 and $600,000 that also match another search that I ran called Pope, which is Pope High School up in Cobb County. So if I, this might not be, I think I did that on a different account. Sorry about that. So I took out the Pope because that was messing me up. I did that actually on a different login. So anyway, DETA 450 to 600. What I'm currently looking at are detached active homes between $450,000 and $600,000. We currently have 2,993 matches on the market, and I'm looking at the first 25. Okay. So if I know the lingo, I can craft a fairly advanced search from using the speed bar. So now you might be asking yourself, how do I know that lingo? How do I learn that lingo? Well, to the left of all of the fields that I've talked about as far as searching goes, we have these little circles. They're gray circles with a question mark in them. So in the speed bar, if I click on that little circle, it brings up the help file and it tells me all of the lingo that I can use to do that search. So check out that help file, all right, for the speed bar. So there's just some interesting facts about the speed bar, what it can do, things like that. So let me go to the third search option, which is, of course, the search tab up along the top there. So when you hover over search, you're going to see a bunch of different property types. So choose whichever property type it is you're wanting to find listings for. So I'll go ahead and choose residential here. And this brings up your search criteria page. All right. This is arguably where you're going to be spending 90% of your time when you're searching for properties. Okay. This is your most customizable search option. So when I hovered over search and I chose residential, like I said, I came to this tab. If I just take a quick look at the structure of this screen, I have all of my search options here in the main body, but in the upper right corner, I want to highlight that I have 3 tabs: criteria, map, and results. This is how I'm going to navigate through my search. Generally speaking, you never, ever want to hit the back button in your browser. The reason for this is if I had entered any criteria into this page and went somewhere else and then went back to this page, it would eat my criteria. So I don't want you to waste time and get frustrated having to put in your information over and over and over again. So don't click the back button in the browser, just as a general rule. All right. So again, in the upper right portion of this data entry screen, we have criteria, map, and results. And if we look in the lower left corner, I have a little bar down here that's going to float. And what I mean by that is as I scroll down, it's always in the lower left corner. So it's going to float. We have clear, which will quickly clear all of my criteria that I might have checked or selected. We have our current number of matches. So when it's more than 5,000, it's going to say 5,000 plus matches. Map and results are the same in button form as we saw up here in the upper right corner as tabs. So it's going to take us to the same place whether I click map in the upper right corner or map in the lower left corner. It's just a matter of convenience as far as where your cursor is or your eyeball or whatever, what have you. So let's just do a quick example search using the criteria tab. So over on the left side of my screen, I have residential detached selected. I have active selected, and that is currently the only thing I've got selected right now. So that's why if I'm only looking for detached homes that are on the market, that's why I have over 5,000, right? It's a very sad day indeed if we have just a couple active homes on the market. So do you have a client that's interested in literally every active home on the market? No, probably, of course not. So you're going to use these fields to start paring down to what your client's looking for. Maybe your client's looking for a home in Dunwoody. So in the city, I'll type in Dunwoody. Okay, now look at what our matches has done. We've gone from over 5,000 to literally just 100. So that tells me that single family homes active in Dunwoody, right now I have 100. I don't know what those 100 are, but I can keep an eye on that number in the lower left corner to kind of keep track of what's going on. Because if you have a client that has given you a big laundry list of, oh, in my new home, I need this, that, the other, that thing over there, and I want a hot tub that's constantly 98 degrees. What? Okay. Well, the problem is if you go in and you put all of that criteria in without checking results, without kind of looking, pretty quickly, you can whittle yourself down to 0 matches. So don't waste time putting in all of the client's criteria. Put in just a little bit of a time and see what happens, right? Hopefully there's plenty of listings on the market that match what your client wants, but always it's a good idea to keep an eye on that number in the lower left. So in Dunwoody, like I was saying right now, at the time of this recording, active homes, detached, single family in Dunwoody, 100. Let's say we want 4 or more bedrooms. So over on the right in the total bedrooms field, 4 or more is indicated as 4 plus. So we go down to 90. So most homes in Dunwoody are at least 4 bedrooms or more. Total full baths, we want 3 or more. Now we go down to 66. Maybe my client wants between 2,500 and 3,000 square feet. We can indicate a range, of course, by putting a dash between them. So there's 7 matches now. And of course, I haven't done anything with the price point, right? Generally speaking, your clients have a price point in mind. So you can obviously put that in there. If you're scrolling through here and you don't see something that you're looking for, maybe my clients would like a pool of their very own. So in the neighborhood amenities, we can see that there's a community pool, but that's not good enough. They want their own private pool. At the very, very bottom of this screen, under additional fields, it's going to say add. I can add more fields to look on. These are just kind of the more common fields. So if I click on add down at the bottom, I can search for pool features, select that, move it over to my selected column. And now if I click on the button down below, if you're trying to follow along with something that you're doing on the screen or you're not looking at the screen, look at the screen just real quickly because I don't want to potentially confuse you. Remember how I said we're never going to click the back button in the browser? Well, this is where it can get kind of confusing because I'm about to tell you to click on the back button. It's not the one in the browser, though. It's the one under the available fields column that just says the word back with a little arrow pointing to the left. If I click that button down at the very bottom, this will guarantee that it does not eat my entries that I might have already done. So if I scroll down, I'm going to find that pool feature. And so to give you another example, let's just say for this purpose that the family just wants a pool. They don't care if it's above ground, in ground. They just want their own pool. It's a dream just to own their own pool, and that's what they want. So there's a bunch of different options in the pool features column. So I could click and then control click, or if you're on a Mac, it's a command click, all of these different things, right? It's a lot of clicks. Or if you've got a family, in this case, like I'm giving this example, that just wants a pool no matter what, I can just choose none and then click not down below. So I'm saying pool features is not none, indicating that we have to have a pool. Well, let's look at my own advice. I now have 0 matches. None of those 7 active properties in my square foot range have a pool. So this is where I'm going to have a conversation with my client and say, well, I understand that you want a pool, but there's just currently nothing that matches, right? We can kind of pivot as we're having the discussion. Okay, so that's just quickly how to add fields down at the bottom, not to indicate something else. The other one, so typically we're going to see that these are on or. So for instance, if I use basement description, let's take a look at this one. So or, as I mentioned, is the default, which means if I have, let's see, basement description is finished and full. So if I kind of control click, like I said, or Mac people, it's a command click. I can control click on things that are in the same list. With or highlighted down here, it means show me properties that have either a full basement or a finished basement. It could have both. It could be a full finished, but it has to have at least one or the other. If, though, I have a client who says, not only do I want a full basement, but it must be finished. I don't want to work in the basement. That's where and comes in. So I can click and so what I'm telling the system now is that all of my listings, every single one, has to have both a full indicated basement description and finished. Does that make sense? So again, we've kind of painted ourselves in a corner because as I look down in the lower left corner, I've got 0 matches. None of these 7 listings have a full finished basement. But if I go back to or, now 3 of them at least have a finished basement or a full basement. Okay. So that's and, or, and not. And once again, this is just a shortened webinar version of what you're going to learn in Matrix Basics class in a classroom setting. I definitely recommend taking the full course in the classroom. So the point here is we've done a search. We got 3 matches. I can click on results. Since my cursor's down here, I can just click on it here. But again, remember that I've got the tab. It's the same. So I can go to results to see the actual details of those 3 listings that are currently on the market. Kind of think about these. Again, I can click into the FMLS numbers to take a look. If I'm in a listing, looking at the report, and I want to go back to the grid. At the very top in the center, right above where it's got the state and the zip code, it says Agent Single Line Display. This link is going to take me back to the grid. Okay, or of course, when I'm in a property, I also have Previous and Next in the upper left corner that I can just kind of thumb through these and look at those. Okay, so that's just some simple navigation into a property report, back out of a property report, and to go from one to another fairly quickly. Okay, but as I mentioned before, we're never clicking the back button. So if I get here and I don't like what I'm seeing, we need to kind of play with this. Let's put in some different criteria. Again, I'm not going to click on the back button. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to these tabs. I can go back to criteria and put in that different fields that I think we might get better luck with, or change our price point or our square footage request, what have you. And third, if I click map up here, third being our third tab that I haven't talked about yet, map, it's going to show our current matches. So there are my 3 listings in Dunwoody. All right. So that's all well and good. But notice that, or I want you to know that we can also search on the map. So I've got this one that's over to the west here, and I've got these 2 in the center, more in the subdivision really here. So I can click and drag that map over to kind of focus on this subdivision. And if my client wants to live more in this part of town, what I can do is up under the map tab, I've got some options up here, and I'm going to stick, let's just keep it really simple. I'm going to draw a radius tool. So I'm going to click on that little circle and click and drag out as far as I want my results to match. Once I let go, now it's going to constrain all of my potential matches to this area. Notice that that one over to the west is gone. If I click back to criteria, now the important part is that this says, oh darn it, I just cleared it out. Sorry, hang on one second. Notice that this says map area selected. When you see that phrase in red at the top of your criteria tab, map area selected, that's the system's way of telling you, hey, I remember, I got this. You want all of your results to be in that particular part of town. So it's a nice, quick way of showing you that you can draw on the map. So as I said, I did a circle. You can do a rectangle or a square. You can do what's called a polygon. So if you want to try to outline a crooked little subdivision that meanders around a lake or something, you can draw any kind of weird shape that you'd like. And of course, again, there is more to learn about drawing on the map. So once again, I'll recommend that you take the Matrix Basics class. All right, so there are your 4 search methods. So one more time, we did map, kind of in reverse order here. We did map, we did our criteria fields, we did the speed bar, and then back on the home tab, we did the express search widget. Okay, now I did go back to the home tab real quickly. If I go back to search residential, it thinks I want to do a new search. What happens if I want to go back to that search that I just ran? Well, enter this nice little feature, recent searches. Okay, it's over to the right of the speed bar in that second green ribbon, as I like to call it. And how this works, I definitely want you to know this one. The recent searches drop-down box there will hold either a week back or 50 of your most recent searches, whichever one it hits first. If you do a lot of searches and maybe you do 50 searches in 2 days, you're going to have the last 2 days worth of history because that hit 50 matches. If, like me, you don't do too many searches, notice mine says 29 down at the bottom, then I have a week back. So the last search that I ran is always the one at the top. So if I click on that one, it brings me back to the search that I just ran. It takes me to the map tab, but I can go to criteria, modify that, go to results, take a look at those results. Okay. So let's talk about, now that we know how to search, rudimentarily. I don't think that's a word. It sounds weird. Anyway, now that we've got the basics, let's phrase it that way, of doing a search. And of course, you can stop, rewind, pause at any point during this YouTube video. But again, maybe I'll make this try to be this the last time. Take the Matrix Basics course if you can. Go back, review it. Now that we know the basics of searching, let's talk about getting these listings out of the system. I want to print them off. I want to email them. I want to do an automatic search to my client, right? So let's talk about, in the last part here, getting these properties out to your client. So over to the left, I have little check boxes. If I want just this top one, I can put a check mark there. And notice that when I put the check mark there, down at the bottom, I have what are called button bars. We have 4 button bars: Actions, Refine, Save, and Carts. On the Actions button bar, which is our default button bar, I would argue that about 80% of what you're going to want to do at any given time is on this Actions bar. Once you check mark one listing at least, this will light up. And so on this, we have email. So I can click email. And it's a pretty basic email editing screen. So to CC, BCC me a copy, subject email, right? Pretty straightforward. So what I can do is, if I start typing in a contact's name, it might suggest that contact. Oh yeah, I know who that is. If you're not sure if you've entered the contact or not, or maybe it's not giving that behavior, it's not pulling up that client's name, you can click on the to link to the left to see your full contact list. Notice that when I'm looking at this full contact list, I can create a new contact right below that window. But I can also create a new contact here. If I make it this far and I say, I already know that I haven't added that client in, this is what I was saying before, I can add a contact kind of midstream. Notice that it's the same screen that we looked at before. So where you enter a contact can be different, but how you enter a contact is always the same. So I'll go ahead and email this property to my friend Jeff. I can give it a subject. Check this one out. Right. Of course, I would say, you know how familiar to be with your clients. If it's somebody that you've known for 30 years, you can say, hey, what's up? I got this house for you. And if it's somebody you've never heard of before, you can say, dear sir or madam, it's up to you, your tone. So subject, email, body. There's my signature, right? I showed you how to do that before. But just like contacts, and now that we're in the middle of an email, you can add a contact. I mentioned it before. If, maybe over this past weekend, I changed brokerages, I have the link at the bottom to edit my signature. Okay. So I've chosen that one property. I filled out very basics of an email. When I click send at the bottom, now I return to the screen that I left, which is my results grid. And up at the top, it says email sent to Bridges, Jeff. Okay, so it's going to tell you that that email was sent to the client. So hopefully here, of course, depending on what kind of email the client's using, what their spam filters might be, or their settings in general of their email, could take, 20 seconds to get to Jeff, could take 20 minutes. Who knows how those settings are done on his side, but it will send that email immediately to the client. So I can check one, check both, right? So that was email down at the bottom. Print, pretty basic as well. If I click print, up comes a full list of things that I can print. So if I want the agent full report, I can select agent full. I can preview this. I can send it to the printer. I can print to PDF. There's one here that's grayed out, and that is email PDF. Anytime you're choosing a report with agent information on it, we will not allow you to email that. We don't want you emailing agent level data to clients. So we're going to gray out that email option just to kind of rest your mind at ease. I've selected now a buyer report, and notice that email is lit up, so I can email that PDF. All right. One last trick I want to remind you, back on the criteria tab, when I was demonstrating full and finished basement, and I told you that you can control click, or again, for Mac people, it's a command click, but you can control click multiple things in a list to select those things. Works here too. So let's just say, for example's sake, you're taking a client out on Saturday to do a buyer tour, and you want a copy of the agent report for yourself, and you want to print out a buyer report for them. Sounds perfectly reasonable. Select one. So in this case, I've already got buyer full selected. I'm going to click my control key and click agent full. So now both of those are checked, and I can click print and print off an agent copy for me and a buyer copy for my client. At the same time, I don't have to come in and do buyer report, then go back to print and do agent report. So it does make your life just a little easier. I'm going to go ahead and click back to results at the bottom. And let's talk now. So there's email and print. Remember that you do have to have at least one selected before this will light up. So that's email and print. I'm going to leave the rest of these for other videos, other topics, other classes that you might be in. They'll cover the other options down there. But for our last topic today, let's talk about setting up this search to automatically send anything new that comes on the market to my client. So notice that I went over to the save bar. I just clicked on the word save down there to the right of actions. And I have 3 choices under save. Again, we're not going to worry about all 3 together today. But I'm going to click new auto email. That's what we want to use for this purpose. So I'm going to click new auto email. As you might suspect, and I kind of told you what we're going to be doing, auto email, of course, is just short for automatic email. So when I'm telling the system I want to automatically email new results, new matches to my client, of course, the first thing I need to do is indicate to the system, hey, who is the client that's going to be receiving these updates? So that's why this field has a yellow background. It's required. I would just choose that client. And again, if I realize at this point I don't have the client entered yet, I can always create a new contact on the fly. It offers me the ability to CC somebody else. I can BCC a copy of emails. Then I have my subject line. I might say homes in Dunwoody, right? Whatever you'd like to put on the subject line. We have 2 tabs below there. We have a welcome email and a recurring email tab, which we can customize. Okay, but essentially what these will do, the welcome email tab is the verbiage that's going to go to the client with the first set of matches, the ones that currently match. So it's going to say, hey, Jeff, I've set up this search for you. This is going to be great. This is how we can communicate. Go to your portal, take a look at this stuff, and you're going to get new matches as they come on the market. You can, of course, it's a little more official sounding than that. So read over that. You can change that up as you like. The recurring email tab, as you can see, much shorter and sweeter, to the point. Clearly, they don't need to be reintroduced to the concept of their portal every time they get an email. So all that's on the recurring email tab is the thought process behind, hey, here's some new matches, right? So again, you can kind of customize that verbiage just by typing in there what you want it to say. There's your email signature, because again, we're talking about crafting an email here, and as per usual, there's your edit your signature. So you can always do that on the fly. Down below, you have some criteria. It's going to remind you of how you got here. I know there is a line in red, so you might say, what is this warning sign? What is this danger? Don't worry. That's just telling you that it's not going to send anything it's not supposed to have in it, like incomplete listings or listings that are marked as coming soon. You cannot send coming soon listings to a client, because technically, just because it's coming soon doesn't mean it's on the market. It's not on the market until it's active. So you can't send coming soon listings to your client using this method. The settings down here, concierge and display. One last time, I'm going to skip this for now. More information about the concierge mode specifically can be learned in the Matrix portal webinar or video or the classroom. Okay, so for information on that, look there. Or, of course, you've always got your knowledge base back on fmls.com. Lastly, then, to talk about, we have our schedule. We have 3 options: ASAP, daily, and monthly. Notice that daily is the default, and we have all the AMs selected. So as the default setting, what this means, every morning, provided there are things to talk about since the last check mark, my client will get any new matches. What I mean by that is, let's just say tomorrow nothing new comes on the market. They're not going to get an email the day after that says, hey, nothing happened yesterday. It's just going to skip an email check mark if nothing happened, right? Makes sense. So using this way, it would just every day it will send something in the morning. I can also send daily is a bit of a misnomer because I can send it up to twice a day, AM and PM. Now those times are pretty much hard-coded to be right around 6:15, 6:30. So 6:15, 6:30 in the morning, 6:15, 6:30 at night is kind of that window, generally speaking, that listings are going to go to your client when those check marks are checked. All right. And also, of course, I can uncheck something. So if my clients, they bowl on Tuesday nights, don't bother sending them an email. They're out bowling their heads off. I can uncheck it and it'll save whatever might have happened from Tuesday morning on to that Wednesday morning check mark or whichever one is checked next, right? So I will typically recommend daily. All right. There's a reason it's the default. Otherwise, ASAP would be, I would imagine, your next option. So for ASAP, what's going to happen is, in this case, I feel pretty safe because if you recall, I only had 2 matches. Well, when there's only 2 matches, that means my client's criteria are really specific. If you have very few matches, or maybe you've got a client who's very pressured to move. I need to live in Atlanta yesterday. Get me into a house immediately. If you've got a really high pressured client or somebody, like I said, who's not super or tastes are very picky, ASAP might be a good setting because each and every match that currently matches and going forward, anything new that matches, each individual listing potentially could send an email to that client. So if you have a search that has 70 matches and you set it up to ASAP, that client could get 70 emails that day or more. Okay. So if you've got a client in that situation, you might warn them, okay, I understand that you need to live in Atlanta immediately, but just understand that you're going to be getting a lot of emails on this search, right? Because conversely, of course, daily is, as I said, the default. And so this is only going to potentially send up to 2 emails a day based on your check marks. And so when you've got a client that's not in a big hurry or has just a wide open set of criteria such that, you have 100 matches or something for them to thumb through, that might be more the correct speed. It's up to you, though. It's always up to you. You do have monthly. I have no idea why you would use this for a client. But let's just say maybe what you're doing right here is a search for all the homes in the neighborhood that you live in, and you're on the HOA board. And so you're kind of running this as some kind of report for yourself, or maybe you're an office admin or you're an admin for an agent and you did a search for your agent's listings. So that I could maybe see. So if you choose monthly, it's going to run on midnight on the first of the month. But once you have all of those options considered and set, when you click save, now current matches are going to be going to that client. And based on the frequency that you chose, future matches will go to the client as well. So that's just really a rough outline of Matrix basics, especially setting it up visually with your widgets, setting it up with your information, including your email signature, entering your contacts, various methods to search, and then once you've searched for properties, how to email either the ones that you found specifically, or setting up that auto email. If you have any problems or questions, feel free to contact our customer support department at 404-255-8660, option 1. They're available to you Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturday, 9 to 5.